Good Friday morning, friends. Welcome back for another episode of the Finding God in the Dark podcast. I'm Don,
I'm Jonathan.
and today we are talking about the 2025,
25, yeah.
26. No, I think it came out
Oh,
like April this year, didn't it?
it's listed
Um,
as 25, but
oh, okay.
yeah.
Fair enough. But the film's called The Long Walk. It is based on a Richard Bachman book.
Yep.
Richard Bachman, for those of you who are unaware, is a pseudonym for Stephen King. He
King.
wrote some of his earliest books. He wrote under that author name just because he wanted to, I think it was he wanted to see if like his people liked him for his writing or just
Yeah.
because it was his name.
Yeah.
So he wrote some of these books. Thinner was another one that was under the Richard Bachman name, and The Running Man. So anyway, the film is The Long Walk. Basic premise of the film. One young man from each state is selected to walk, and you must continue to walk at a minimum of 3 miles per hour. If you fall below that for a number of times, you're eliminated from the competition
And
rather violently.
from life as well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that this film is one, it's pretty intense.
And they just to let you know, it's set in a dystopian future where there's extreme poverty,
Hmm.
and this is kind of seen as a ticket of one of these kids' way out to riches. Because they receive we were never told the amount, but they receive a lot of money is basically
Life-changing
oh,
money.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um and to be, 100% above board. We do this all the time. This is R-rated for a reason. It is
Yes.
violent.
Yeah.
It is foul language.
Yeah.
There's some very adult themes in this film.
Yeah.
There's things that, well, I mean, it's technically horror, but it's not. It's more a human horror than
Yeah.
like a monster, supernatural, anything
It's
like that.
basically the monsters are us, is basically it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So where would you like to start, John?
I first of all, just in terms of the time period he wrote this, it seems to be an allegory about the Vietnam War in a lot of ways. Or, kind of a conversation piece about young men dying,
Hmm.
that kind of thing. And because it was written and he kind of envisioned it in the early 70s, it makes me think he's using it to talk about the Vietnam War. At least it seems like a good way to kind of connect those dots. I found it interesting that the amount of money is never specified, you know, and it's basically I don't know why, but I kept thinking about in ancient Roman times, some emperor at one point said all the people need is circuses and bread.
Bread
And
and circuses.
what he meant was the gladiator games.
Hmm.
So basically, all they needed is basic sustenance and violence, and they'll be fine, you know.
Hmm.
And you kind of get that sense with this is there is reflection, but it only comes later. But at the beginning, all of these young men are all they're focused on is this money will change my life,
Right.
not this is a crazy system. And why aren't the people that run the system using all this money they're going to bestow on me to feed people and make people's lives better?
Yeah. It is, particularly you start at the beginning when, there's these 50 young men and they all get a number.
Yeah.
And, every one of them thinks they're going to be the last man standing.
Yes.
And the reality is every one of them has a 1 in 50 chance of being the last man standing. And some less than that, just considering their physical fitness.
Yes.
But yeah, this is the kind of thing where I'd look at it. I would personally look at it and go, I'm not playing those odds.
Yeah.
I'm not playing those odds,
Yeah.
and so. you have to think that it is a monumentally life-changing amount of money.
Yeah,
It's like people that play who are the overwhelming majority of people who play the lottery are
poor.
poor. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. Well, it's this kind of tendency that human beings have of accepting their reality as the way reality has to be.
Yeah.
So we accept injustice, we accept poverty, we accept the kind of corrupt structures of our society. And kind of a lot of us get in the mindset of it just this is the way it has to be, so I'll play the angles and try to make it work as best I can for me. And unfortunately, that never leads to systematic change. To have systematic change, we all have to go, or at least a significant amount of human beings have to go, no, 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 this isn't how it has to be. We're going to work on things so things are different.
We've got to think bigger than ourselves,
Yeah. Yep.
which, well, hey, welcome to the Christian church. Um,
Yes. At its best, that's what it's supposed to be about.
it's
Absolutely.
exact. I'll grant you that. At its best, that is what it's supposed to be for sure.
Yeah.
Um, I was really taken. I want to find
Quote.
the particular. Well, you talked about violence as distraction. I mean, that's that whole bread
Yep.
and circuses thing.
Yeah.
And I think it was Caesar actually
Yeah.
who said that. It was one of those things we learned in like Latin
Yeah.
class, and I took
I,
Latin in
I
high
knew it
school.
was an emperor. I didn't know which Caesar or which emperor it was, but yeah, that basically in a letter he references all the people need is bread and circuses and they'll be fine.
And that's the same sort of level of elitism
Yeah.
that you saw in the French Revolution from Marie Antoinette. Well,
Yeah.
the people have no bread. Well, let them eat cake.
Yeah.
No, you don't understand.
You don't understand. They don't have what they need to make bread or cake. It doesn't.
Um, I think that was neat. The community support angle was
Yeah.
interesting because they're walking across. I don't think they ever said which state, but a
It,
particular state.
he always writes in Maine, so I feel like it's probably Maine.
It could be.
Yeah.
But there's like people along the way
Yeah.
who like are cheering them on, and you're thinking to yourself like, yeah, but you realize that like at any moment as they're walking by, somebody could be shot.
Yeah. Yeah. It is kind of this idea of how we are anesthetized to violence and brutality, you know,
Yeah.
um, how, and look, I've never been into combat sports, but like I never understand even some of it I get, but I don't understand how people like will cheer when someone's getting their face bloodied. Like at some point you want to just go like, "Hey, he lost. Why don't we go get him some help?" Like.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I never, never watched boxing. Even in the Olympics, I was never interested. I've never, honestly, I couldn't tell you I've watched 5 minutes of any UFC fight ever.
Yeah,
It holds no charm for me to
yeah,
see men beat each other up for money,
yeah,
right? Because that's basically what that is. I mean, I have certainly I have a sense of, and I will admit this, a sense of retributive justice in me, where, I kind of like to see the bad guy get his butt kicked.
yeah,
Um, but that's a different thing. That's a
yeah,
different feel than just, violence for the sake of violence or
yeah,
violence for the sake of money.
yeah.
That holds no charm for me in the least. And
Yeah, I thought the script did a nice job. I'm guessing the book does as well of how being in the process and being in kind of the grinder of the system helps you realize how flawed the system is. Because at the beginning, there's kind of this rah rah, I'm gonna make money, or this
Mhm.
kind of charm to it for a lot of these guys, how they're into it. Like when the first person dies, the major who kind of oversees all of this goes, uh hooray for, I can't remember the guy's name, but hooray, and then most of the guys cheer yay, and at the end like they're basically saying F the walk, and they're like they're like F the major, F the walk, like there's this sense of we get it now and they're just using us, and we understand they're just using us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This is, I did mention last week that it got to a certain point in the film
yeah.
when, who is the main kid here? Ray?
Ray and Pete, yeah, Ray and
Yeah,
Pete.
Ray, he was kind of wasn't sharing what his
Yeah,
one wish was going to be.
yeah,
He didn't want to share. And then when he finally did, I like immediately in my head, I said, okay, this is how the film is going to end.
yeah,
Okay. And then when it got to and I'm not going to give away the ending,
yeah.
but when it got to the ending, it did exactly what I thought it was going to do.
Well, I think it's interesting. I have never read this novella or this book, but I was reading online after I watched it the first time that they changed the ending.
They did.
So the book ends with essentially there's no kind of aim of violence toward anybody necessarily, but it ends with the the Ray character, who in this movie isn't the last contestant. We'll leave it at that.
Mhm.
But the Ray character, he essentially goes mad and sees what he thinks is another walker ahead of him, and he just keeps walking. And I was reflecting on that. To me, that's a much darker ending, and I'm guessing that's why they didn't want to, like, even though this is a very dark ending, you don't go away from this movie going, "Yay!" Like it's a dark ending. But that ending, I think, it really reflects on hopelessness because, like,
Yeah.
literally, the person who won this horrific challenge has gone insane and continues to walk because he thinks there's still more person to beat, you know.
It's interesting to hold the change in endings up of two
Yeah,
films versus two books, both by
yeah,
Stephen King, that we
yeah,
have reviewed recently, this and The Mist,
yes,
in that they changed the ending in both films.
yeah,
This one is more hopeful
yeah,
than the book, and The Mist is much less hopeful than the book.
yeah. Well, and again, I understand that tendency to go, you know, I'm just gonna assume I'm right. He was critiquing the failure of America in the late 60s and early 70s to basically view their young men as anything less than cannon fodder. Like basically, we need them for a war. It doesn't matter what happens to them. And that didn't radically change, but my instinct is always as if I was writing, I'd always want to end with a level of hope. And Stephen King clearly is okay with saying, nope, I don't see any hope, and
Yeah.
I'm fine with the character walking to his end in madness because that's kind of where our society is. Like, and I feel like as pastors, that's an option, and as Christians, that's an option either I don't want or I don't think we have. That there's always got to be a level of hope, I think, for Christians.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's well, look, not only is it just one of the four Sundays of Advent,
yeah,
but I think it has to be the underpinning of almost every message that we preach.
yeah,
Somewhere in there, not that you have to explicitly use the word,
yeah,
but somewhere in there is the very idea of hope. Because well, let's take it to the other extreme. If, as the preacher, all you preach is fire and brimstone,
yeah.
you can be loud and boisterous and you're going to preach into an empty building.
Yeah,
Um,
I guess to me, the way I'd put it is the cross and the resurrection are connected. And
mhm.
so your message has to address both. the
Yeah.
reality of brokenness in this world and the reality that sometimes bad things happen to people. But at the same time, we believe there's something more than the worst thing that's in front of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Not just bad things happen to people, but happen to the best of people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even the best of us, or the best of humanity, let's, not just say we're the best, but, the best of us,
Yeah.
um, fall on hard times. Bad things happen.
Yeah.
And yet God is still in control. And yet there is still hope and a resurrection.
Yeah.
Yeah, if that's not part of who you are as a Christian, I would question who you are as a Christian,
Yeah.
because it is foundational. Absolutely.
Yeah. I will try my best not to give away the ending
This
because
is hard.
it is a recent movie.
Yeah.
But I really struggle with a character in the movie that was lifted up as kind of this um a figure that saw the best in people and saw the desire to want to create a deeper community of compassion among the men walking. You know, at the very end to have him give in to violence, I didn't like that ending. I was like,
Yeah.
especially because I felt like we didn't see that progression. We, moments before he gives into violence, he's willing to give up his life,
Right.
for somebody else. And there's a part of me that's like, that felt like a forced ending and not an ending that seemed organic to the character.
I'll say, since that's the ending I was able to predict in my head,
Yeah.
it felt like a Hollywood ending
Yes.
and not a reality ending.
It felt like a response to these people are doing bad things. They have to have they have to have a something bad done to them.
Yeah. And
Instead
here
of
we are again.
Yeah,
Here we
yeah,
are again back at, when you and I were part of that movie group, and we were meeting at Panera Bread, and we saw Just Mercy, I think
yeah,
was the film,
yeah,
and the idea of retributive justice, right? This is like, look, there's, like I said, there's a part of me that appreciates that. And I
yeah.
think there's a part of a lot of people that appreciate that. You want to see the bad guy get their
It's a human
comeuppance.
response. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's also bleak.
Yeah, and I'm going to quote a Hindu, not a
Okay.
Christian, but I think Gandhi put it really well. An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. Like,
Yeah.
you know, ultimately, if we're going to find a better world, somebody has to step out of the cycle of violence
Yeah.
and say, I'm not going to give you back what you deserve. I'm going to step out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would, I'd probably throw out that, Jesus told us to turn the other cheek, but there's a whole other meaning to that
Yes,
that
it's a very
doesn't
deep
really fit
conversation.
here.
Yeah. But this idea of loving your enemy, I've always, I shouldn't say always, but for a long time now, I've interpreted that as he's basically saying, if you really try to love your enemy, they will no longer be your enemy because you can't love an enemy.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that's yeah, if only.
Yeah.
That's an if only, right?
Yeah.
Um, they there was a couple of scenes in here. You lifted up this idea of finding beauty in difficult moments. There were a
Yeah.
couple of scenes in this film where they're just, as they're walking along, and you just look, they just look to the scenery along the sidelines. You're like, in the middle of this,
Yeah.
what should be an awful, awful experience,
Yeah.
still there are these moments of like serenity
Yeah.
and peace. And you kind of step back into that whole, you know finding God in creation thing,
Yeah. Well, you have the moment of them playing catch, and then you have the moment of them singing a song together.
Hmm.
And you, in those, both of those moments, they're rising above the tragedy of their existence,
Right.
and
And that's the thing, in those moments, they forget, and
yeah,
even as a viewer, you forget that only one of these people is going to survive this,
yeah.
you know?
And I don't even I agree with you. It's a moment of it can be a moment of forgetfulness, but in a powerful way, it can also be a moment of I'm transcending this. This isn't
Fair.
going to define me,
Fair, yeah.
Um, and especially the moment of singing, because they're singing about the idea of they're going to help. One of the characters dies and has a wife, and they're singing about how they're going to help her, and her name's Clementine, and so
Clementine.
they sing the old song, I can't remember what it's called, but
Oh, oh, my darling.
oh
Oh,
my
my
darling
darling.
Clementine. But they sing it together, and in that moment, there's this there's this connection that they have formed, and kind of this statement there that a good's going to come out of it because they're going to help her. Whoever's left is going to help her. And in that moment, they do transcend their circumstance, and there's some beauty in that.
Yeah. Um, it's not all. How do you want to characterize this film? Because it is kind of bleak.
Yeah, no,
Um,
it's not a it's not a good feel good movie at all.
no,
Like
no.
honestly, I feel like it's a critique of the human tendency to believe in the power of violence, and like you know and and kind of believe in the power of that violence is going to free us, violence is going to solve these problems, and I thought of also there's a phrase that gets thrown around a lot at monasteries, uh pray and work, you know. And there's a scene when Ray is being dropped off by his mother, and the radio host on the car is basically going, pray for the poor people, pray for, and you're like, and all I can think is, but there's no work in there. You're not doing anything. You're just, you know, sometimes people will say, stop praying for people and actually do something.
Mhm.
And sometimes that's over the top and that's not fair critique. But prayer is supposed to be put into action, and prayer is supposed to motivate action. And in that moment with the radio DJ is literally talking about this horrible event that's about to happen where 49 young men are going to get killed. And at the same time, he's praying for all the poor people in the country. And it's like, hey, those two things don't come together, man. Those two things don't fit, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I'm my only, I guess my, obviously we don't know how much money
Yeah.
they're talking about,
And
right?
I really do think that's fascinating that it's like, oh, it's almost like, oh, we'll give you a lot of money. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. And your one wish, you can have one wish. But
Yeah.
obviously we don't know how much money we're talking about, but in order to solve the problem of poverty,
Yeah.
I mean, countries have been throwing money at that problem for centuries
Yeah.
and haven't dented it. So I don't know that throwing money at it is the answer. It hasn't worked yet. I don't
Yeah.
imagine that, even if you were able to take all of Elon Musk's money and throw it at poverty, I don't think you'd fix the problem. Um,
It would have to be targeted, and but at the same time, like things like Social Security and Medicare, which you could argue you're throwing money at things, has improved a lot of people's lives.
sure.
So there's a tension there.
Yeah.
We haven't solved every problem, but
I,
but
I, I
again,
think my pushback, I guess, is that in some cases, notable cases,
yeah,
that it's a choice.
yes,
People choose. Look, I'm poor. I'm going to take what I can get from the government because I don't want to work. I don't want to go. Well, then
Yeah, I mean, I do think I've spent a lot of my life now working with people that are extremely poor. Like that's
Mhm.
been a lot of my jobs have been literally in the midst of
you're
poverty.
you're allowed to say where you did that, John.
Yeah. And I did it in Patterson, New Jersey for about 3 years.
Hmm.
And I can tell you, there were people that were clearly gaming the system to get food out of us. There just
Right.
was. There just were.
Sure.
You know, like one good example is we did have people get a holiday basket around Thanksgiving and literally go down the street and try to sell it, you know. Um,
Hmm.
but I always tell people this, the vast majority of people I interacted with and worked with, they literally needed every piece of food we ever gave them.
Sure.
Like, you know, and again, I feel like sometimes we have a tendency to look at the people that abuse systems and assume that that's everybody, and that's not accurate. It's just not.
Yeah. Well, and the other side of that, I think it's fair for us because
Yeah,
I had this experience my first year in my previous appointment because I
yeah,
was appointed to the shore.
yeah,
Sandy hit. We had a lot of relief come in through the church,
yeah,
and there were people who were taking certainly more than they needed.
yeah,
So, where was it going? Where they give it to other people? And I had folks from my congregation who were concerned about that and expressed their frustration with it.
yeah,
And I said, here's the other side of that for us. We're not responsible for what other people do
yeah,
with the charity that's given from us.
yeah.
So,
And
put that where you will.
And I want, like, for example, no human system is ever going to be perfect. So there's
Right.
always going to be problems with any system. At the same time, I think we have to recognize, and this movie, I think, does a powerful recognition that what the government is doing in this movie is they are helping people ignore the problem, not helping them address the problem.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
And let's not skip over the fact that what is he,
major, yeah.
the major in this film is the same guy who played Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
Let's not skip over that this is Mark Hamill who is playing this really nasty evil guy.
So the
Okay.
so the literally the what's the what's Star Wars called? What's the fourth one called? The
The Return of the Jedi,
no
the
the
fourth
Return of
one.
no the first one, the Star Wars is in the series now called something of Hope. So
Oh, A New Hope.
A New Hope.
Yeah.
So he literally plays the man who was supposed to bring hope. And in this movie, he's the man who is beating hope out of
Of
everybody.
people so long distance from Luke
Yes.
Skywalker. Not that there's any relation
Oh,
between these two universes. I'm
that would
just
be hilarious.
be something. Um, so, folks, we probably want to wrap this up a little bit. This is it's an interesting film. I think it was better than I expected it to be.
Yeah,
Um, and but it's also bleaker but really, I mean, just understand the premise and the fact that here you're as the viewer building connections sort of with obviously not all 50 of
sure.
these young men, but with a group,
Yeah,
and then to see them just start to fall off and fall away and be, you know, taken out.
yeah,
It's an it's
yeah.
an emotional film.
Well,
Go ahead.
no, I think what it does really well is it invites the person watching the film to think about what do I accept as a given in my life?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, and that might be the biggest might be one of the biggest questions that we didn't get to,
yeah.
right? Is why does this become acceptable for
And
society?
why do people want to gather at the end of this and watch the last person be shot? Like why
Yeah.
do that? Why
Yeah.
celebrate? And then why shoot off fireworks and like like the fact that we can kind of get to a point where we don't set with the violence and the horror of events is a critique this movie lays at everybody's feet, I would argue.
Yeah, because let's be honest. I mean, we fire off the confetti and we shoot fireworks when a team wins a championship, but the other team didn't die to get there.
Yes.
In fact, more often than not, they didn't even really get beat up.
No.
So, amen. Tough film. It's a bit of a tough film to watch,
Yeah.
folks. If you have an issue with violence or language or anything, please don't watch it. It'll be challenging for you in that respect.
Yeah.
But if that stuff doesn't bother you, I think it's a film worth talking about.
Mhm.
So, all right, let's move on to next week. Now, for those who are not aware, I am currently on a renewal leave. Although we're going to catch up here and there as I'm going along. I'll be traveling around a little bit in the next couple of weeks. But John, you have a film in mind for next week?
Yeah, it can also be found on HBO Max. It's
Okay.
called Drama. And
Drama.
yes, the drama. And it is a movie about a wedding with a big old twist. And I was kind of curious about your take on the twist. And also, it becomes a movie about forgiveness and how we forgive or don't forgive. And
Okay.
I just thought it'd be an interesting conversation for us to have.
Okay. Cool. All right. Then we'll watch for next week. We'll watch the drama.
Yeah.
For this week, friends, thanks thanks for watching. We know that we don't have a huge audience,
Yeah.
but we appreciate those of you who do
Absolutely.
put up with our antics once a week. Um, so until next
We
Friday,
should pay you. We just don't have the money to do it.
we're making nothing on this. This is purely a vanity project.
Yes,
Look,
it
this
is.
is the only way in the world that two bald guys are getting this much attention. Um,
Absolutely.
so, friends, until next week, keep on finding God in the dark. We will see you all again next Friday. Take care and God bless. Bye now.
Buck.
Thanks again for watching the Finding God in the Dark podcast, friends. If you've made it here all the way to the end of the video, then obviously you find something that we're doing to be educational or informative, something valuable in this podcast. So we want to invite you to go ahead and share this with your friends. Hit the like button. Follow us for more of this. We publish every week at 10 a.m. on Friday mornings on YouTube. Shortly thereafter, you'll find us somewhere on Facebook. Until next Friday, keep on finding God in the dark. Thanks for watching. Bye now.